Daniel Carter believed that wallets told stories, not because of the cash inside them, but because of the things people chose to carry when no one else was looking. His own wallet was old, worn around the edges, and held together by careful stitching he had done himself after one corner ripped. Most people would have thrown it away years ago. Daniel couldn't. It had been a birthday gift from his late wife, Rachel. She had laughed while handing it to him. "You buy a new phone every 3 years. But you'll probably keep this wallet until we're both 90. He had smiled and kissed her forehead. "You know me too well." Neither of them imagined she wouldn't live long enough to see their 10th wedding anniversary. "My name is Daniel Carter. I was 38 years old, a widowed single father, an elevator maintenance technician during the week, a handyman whenever someone needed honest work completed on weekends. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was enough. Every morning began the same way. At exactly 6:15, my alarm rang. By 6:30, pancakes or scrambled eggs filled our tiny kitchen with the smell of breakfast. At 7 o'clock, my 6-year-old daughter Sophie came downstairs wearing mismatched socks because she insisted they brought her good luck. "Daddy." She twirled around. "Do butterflies care if socks match?" I laughed. "I don't think butterflies notice socks." "Good. Because pink and green are my lucky colors." She smiled with the same bright blue eyes her mother once had. Sometimes looking at Sophie hurt. Not because of who she was, because every smile reminded me of someone I missed. Rachel had died 4 years earlier after an aggressive form of cancer. The diagnosis came suddenly. Within 8 months she was gone. The hardest conversation of my life wasn't in the hospital. It happened afterward. Sophie climbed into my lap one evening and quietly asked, "When Mommy comes back from heaven, will she remember me?" I cried after she fell asleep that night. But from then on I promised myself one thing. Sophie would grow up surrounded by love instead of grief. Money was tight. Hospital bills had emptied nearly all our savings. I sold my motorcycle, moved into a smaller apartment, accepted overtime whenever possible. On weekends I repaired fences, painted houses, assembled furniture, anything that honestly paid. Still, every Friday remained special. No matter how tired I felt, Friday belonged to Sophie. Sometimes we visited the library, sometimes the park. Sometimes we shared one large pizza because she insisted it tasted better that way. That particular Saturday, Sophie had finished her first dance recital. She wasn't the best dancer. Half the time she watched the other children instead of following the routine. But when she spotted me applauding in the audience, she smiled proudly and waved right in the middle of the performance. The instructor laughed. The audience laughed. I laughed hardest of all. Afterward, I lifted her into my arms. "You were amazing." I forgot one spin. I didn't notice. She whispered. I did. Then she grinned. But I remembered the ending. We always remember the important parts. That became our celebration. Ice cream after every recital. No exceptions. We walked through the downtown plaza, enjoying the warm afternoon. Street musicians filled the air with cheerful music. Children chased giant soap bubbles. Tourists gathered near the old fountain, taking photographs. Sophie carefully carried a strawberry ice cream cone almost as large as her face. "Daddy, what? If Mommy were here, what flavor would she pick?" I smiled. "Chocolate. Every single time. No surprises?" "No surprises." Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "I think heaven probably has unlimited chocolate. I'm counting on it." She laughed so loudly that nearby strangers smiled. While helping her wipe melted ice cream from her hands, I unknowingly placed my old leather wallet on a nearby park bench. A pigeon startled Sophie. She squealed with excitement and ran toward the fountain. I hurried after her. Neither of us noticed the wallet left behind. Inside that worn wallet were only $32 in cash. My driver's license, a debit card, several faded receipts, Sophie's latest school photo, and one picture no one outside my family had ever seen. It showed Rachel standing beside another young woman, both smiling as if they had no worries in the world. The photograph had been taken nearly 20 years earlier. Rachel had always told me the woman beside her was her closest childhood friend, a friendship that mysteriously ended before we met. Rachel never explained why. Whenever I asked, she simply smiled sadly and changed the subject. After Rachel passed away, I found the photo tucked inside one of her journals. On the back she had written only 6 words. "No matter what happens, sisters forever." She had never mentioned having a sister. I assumed it was simply a way of describing a close friend. So I carried the picture with me. Not because I understood it, but because it had mattered deeply to Rachel. Across the plaza, a convoy of black SUVs quietly pulled to the curb. People began whispering. Security personnel stepped out first. Then a woman wearing a simple cream-colored pantsuit emerged. She wasn't dressed to impress. She didn't need to be. Her confidence spoke louder than expensive jewelry ever could. Her name was Victoria Langford, CEO of Langford Medical Technologies, one of the country's youngest self-made billionaires. She had come to the plaza for the opening of a children's health charity event only a few blocks away. As Victoria walked toward the entrance, something caught her attention near the empty bench. A worn brown wallet. She bent down and picked it up, intending only to find identification so it could be returned. The moment she opened it, a faded photograph slipped into her hand. Victoria froze. Her breathing stopped. She stared at the smiling young woman standing beside Daniel's late wife. The woman in the picture wasn't a stranger. It was her own mother, decades younger. And written on the back, in handwriting Victoria recognized instantly, were the words that would change both of their lives forever. No matter what happens, sisters forever. Victoria stared at the faded photograph for what felt like an eternity. Her hands trembled. She turned the picture over once more, reading the familiar handwriting. No matter what happens, sisters forever. Her heart pounded. That was her mother's handwriting. She would have recognized it anywhere. Yet the woman standing beside her mother in the photograph was someone Victoria had never seen before. Who was she? And why had a stranger been carrying this picture for so many years? Ms. Langford, one of her security guards, stepped closer. Is everything okay? Victoria carefully slipped the photograph back into the wallet. Find the owner. Immediately. The guard looked around the plaza. A nearby street vendor pointed toward the fountain. I saw a little girl running that way. Victoria followed the direction. A few moments later, she spotted a man lifting a laughing little girl onto his shoulders. The child held an almost finished strawberry ice cream cone while pointing excitedly at the pigeons. The man looked ordinary. Worn jeans, work boots, sun-faded shirt. The kind of person most people would walk past without noticing. Victoria quietly approached. Excuse me. Daniel turned around. Yes. She held up the wallet. Is this yours? Daniel instinctively reached into his jacket pocket. His face immediately changed. I didn't even realize I'd lost it. He accepted it gratefully. Thank you. You probably saved me hours of replacing everything. Victoria smiled gently. I happened to open it to look for identification. I hope you don't mind. Of course not. Then she hesitated. There was a photograph inside. Daniel's expression softened. Yes. My wife's. And the woman beside her? Daniel frowned. I wish I knew. Victoria blinked. You don't know? He shook his head. My wife always said she was her closest friend. She passed away 4 years ago. I never got the chance to ask more questions. Victoria took a slow breath. The woman beside your wife is my mother. Daniel stared at her. I'm sorry. My mother. I recognized her immediately. Silence surrounded them. Even the noise of the busy plaza seemed to disappear. Daniel looked down at the photograph again. That's impossible. My wife never mentioned your family. Victoria nodded slowly. My mother never mentioned yours either. She looked at Sophie. The little girl smiled politely. Hi. I'm Sophie. Victoria smiled back. Hello, Sophie. You have pretty shoes. Sophie giggled. Thank you. For reasons she couldn't explain, Victoria immediately felt warmth toward the child. She turned back to Daniel. Would you have coffee with me? I think both of us deserve some answers. Later that afternoon, they sat in a quiet cafe overlooking the river. Victoria called her mother. Mom, I need you to come. Her mother's voice sounded concerned. Is something wrong? I found someone. 30 minutes later, Eleanor Langford walked into the cafe. The moment she saw the photograph lying on the table, she froze. Her eyes filled with tears. She picked it up with trembling hands. Rachel, Daniel quietly nodded. She was my wife. Eleanor covered her mouth. I've looked for her for 23 years. Daniel stared in disbelief. You knew her? Knew her? Eleanor whispered. She was my younger sister. The room became completely silent. Daniel felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath him. My wife told me she was an only child. Eleanor slowly shook her head. No. Our father forced us apart. He wanted me to marry into a wealthy family. Rachel refused to leave the man she loved. So our father cut her out of the family. Tears rolled down Eleanor's face. I searched everywhere after our father died. But she'd changed her last name after marriage. I never found her. Daniel closed his eyes. Rachel had carried that pain for years. Yet she never spoke bitterly about it. She simply chose peace. Eleanor reached across the table. I'm so sorry. I lost my sister. And you lost your wife. Daniel nodded quietly. For the next several hours they shared stories. Eleanor told Sophie about the aunt she never knew she had. Daniel shared photographs from Rachel's life. Victoria listened silently, realizing that the lonely branches of two separate families had suddenly become one tree again. Over the following months, everything changed. Eleanor became the grandmother Sophie had unknowingly been missing. Sunday lunches became a tradition. Birthday parties grew louder. Holiday tables became fuller. Victoria often visited Daniel and Sophie after work. At first it was to spend time with her newly discovered family. Then it became because she genuinely enjoyed being there. She helped Sophie with school science projects, attended dance recitals, even learned how to bake cookies despite having almost no experience in the kitchen. One evening Sophie looked up from her homework. Aunt Victoria? Yes. You smile more now. Victoria laughed softly. I think you're right. A year later, Langford Medical Technologies announced a Children's Cancer Foundation named after Rachel Carter. The foundation helped families struggling with treatment costs, transportation, and temporary housing. During the opening ceremony, Eleanor stood beside Daniel holding Sophie's hand. Reporters asked Daniel how losing a wallet had changed his life. He smiled. I thought I had lost something important that day. He looked toward Victoria, Eleanor, and Sophie. But it turns out I found a family my wife always hoped we'd have. Sometimes life hides extraordinary miracles inside ordinary moments. A forgotten wallet, an old photograph, a chance meeting in a crowded plaza. None of them seemed important by themselves. Yet together they reunited two sisters' broken family, fulfilled a promise written decades earlier, and gave a little girl the grandparents, aunt, and future her mother had always dreamed she would one day have. Because love has a remarkable way of finding its way home, even after many years, many tears, and many unanswered questions.